When you begin to grow, to heal, and to change the way you interact with people who once controlled or manipulated you, something powerful happens. Your transformation starts to expose their behavior for what it truly is. This exposure isn't always loud or confrontational. In fact, it often happens in the quiet shift of your energy, the clarity in your decisions, or the strength in your boundaries. But make no mistake, when you stop playing the role someone cast you in, especially someone toxic or narcissistic, it unsettles them deeply. It forces them to confront a reality they've worked hard to deny, that their power over you was never real. It was borrowed from your willingness to believe in their false version of who you were. For people who manipulate, their entire strategy depends on maintaining a narrative where they are in control and you are dependent. Whether it's emotional manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping, or silent treatment, these tools only work if you question your own perception and cater to theirs. The moment you begin to trust yourself more than their version of you, the dynamic shifts entirely. They can sense it immediately. You might still be quiet, still processing your emotions, still learning how to assert your boundaries, but to them, the change is obvious, and it terrifies them. Why? Because your growth reflects back the truth they've been trying to hide from you and from themselves. When you were confused, uncertain, and constantly seeking validation, they could position themselves as the one who had the answers. They could mold your reality, distort your self-image, and rewrite situations to fit their agenda. But when you start recognizing the patterns, when you start connecting the dots, and when you finally call it what it is, manipulation, control, emotional abuse, that recognition doesn't just set you free. It threatens everything they've built. They've relied on your silence, your doubt, your guilt. Now you've started asking questions. You've stopped apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You've begun to listen to your instincts instead of second-guessing them. That inner shift might not even be visible on the outside yet, but they can feel it. Manipulators are incredibly attuned to the energy of those they try to control. They know the difference between someone who's playing along and someone who's waking up. And when they sense you pulling away from the narrative, they panic. The irony is, your growth isn't even about them. It's about reclaiming your peace, your identity, your life. But to someone who has built their identity around controlling you, your independence feels like betrayal. It undermines their sense of power, their illusion of superiority. They may lash out, accuse you of being selfish, cold, or ungrateful. They may try to provoke you into reacting, to drag you back into the old cycle. That's not love or concern, it's desperation. They are trying to reassert the version of you that made them feel strong. In their world, you weren't allowed to grow beyond what they could control. If you gained confidence, they questioned your motives. If you found your voice, they accused you of being disrespectful. If you distanced yourself, they called you disloyal. Every step you took toward healing was treated as a personal attack, not because it hurt them, but because it took away their access to manipulate you. And yet, the most powerful part of this entire dynamic is that you didn't need revenge. You didn't need to scream or prove anything. You simply changed. You got clearer. You stopped engaging with their mind games. You started saying no without guilt. You walked away from conversations that only left you feeling small. You gave yourself permission to prioritize your mental health. And suddenly, their tactics no longer worked. That's when they start to unravel. The script they've used for so long no longer applies. The reactions they once counted on, the tears, the arguments, the pleading don't come. Instead, they're met with silence, with calm detachment, with someone who's done explaining themselves. This disarms them. They try harder. They may escalate, manipulate, or even play the victim. But the truth is, they're not angry because you've hurt them. They're angry because you've stopped letting them hurt you. It's important to understand that toxic people don't just want attention, they want control. They want you emotionally entangled so they can continue to dictate the story. And when you no longer fit their version of you, when you flip the script by choosing healing over chaos, they lose their grip, and it scares them. Not because they love you, but because they loved the power they had over you. Your healing illuminates their dysfunction. Your self-respect challenges their entitlement. Your boundaries feel like punishment to someone who benefited from your lack of them, and so they go mad, not in a literal sense, but in the way that everything they believed about their dynamic with you begins to unravel. The illusion is breaking. You're no longer the person they could guilt, silence, or belittle, and that leaves them with nothing to hold on to. This is why it's so common for people to lash out when you start healing. They may accuse you of changing, as if that's a bad thing. They may say, you're not the same anymore, and they're right. You're not. You're wiser, stronger, more self-awareness. You've stopped confusing love with loyalty to dysfunction. You've realized that you can care about someone and still walk away from the pain they cause. That realization is your freedom and their undoing. But the beautiful part is, you didn't have to destroy them to find your power. You just had to reclaim yourself. You just had to remember that you're not responsible for their behavior, only for your response. And by choosing growth over drama, clarity over confusion, and peace over chaos, you flipped the script. You changed the narrative from one where they had control to one where you had choice. And that, more than anything, is what drives them mad. They never expected you to rise. They counted on you staying in the role they created. But you're not that person anymore. And no matter how much they twist the story or resist the change, the truth is this: once you grow beyond someone's manipulation, there's no going back. You see it all too clearly. You value yourself too deeply, and you finally realize that you don't need anyone to validate your worth. You already know who you are. That's the real power. That's how you win them into a spiral, because their power didn't come from strength or respect. It came from your emotional entanglement. This is why not reacting is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending something doesn't hurt. It's about becoming mindful of what you give your energy to. When you start to respond rather than react, you reclaim your emotional autonomy. You no longer allow them to dictate how you feel, what you think, or what you do. That shift is profound. And for someone who was addicted to controlling you, it's infuriating. They may initially ramp up their behavior to get a rise out of you. They'll say things designed to sting, to provoke you into breaking your silence. They might accuse you of being cold, uncaring, or manipulative. These are not genuine observations. They're attempts to break your composure. Because to them, your silence is not neutrality, it's resistance. It means they no longer get to puppeteer your emotions. It means you're taking back your power, and they can't handle that. This is especially true for narcissists and other emotionally manipulative individuals who need constant reinforcement of their superiority and relevance. When you stop reacting, you are essentially denying them the emotional supply they've come to rely on. You're no longer confirming their importance by engaging with them. You're no longer giving them the satisfaction of watching you suffer or scramble for their approval. You're detaching. And that detachment feels like rejection to them, not because they love you, but because they loved controlling you. There's a misconception that staying calm or silent in the face of manipulation is weakness or avoidance. But in reality, it takes immense strength to hold your center when someone is trying to destabilize you. It requires emotional discipline, self-respect, and a deep understanding of what you will and won't tolerate. Confronted with the emptiness, insecurity, or shame that they've spent so long projecting onto others. Of course, there will be those who try to punish your silence. They may give you the silent treatment themselves, trying to make you feel guilty or isolated. They may smear you to others, claiming you've changed or that you're being unreasonable. These are last-ditch efforts to regain the emotional upper hand. But you must remember, someone who respects you doesn't need to manipulate you. When you stop reacting, you start responding from a place of self-worth. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop engaging in arguments that go nowhere. You start setting limits, not to punish others, but to protect your peace. And that transformation doesn't just change your relationship with the toxic person, it changes your relationship with yourself. You begin to trust your instincts. You start to value your time and energy. You stop needing closure from people who never intended to give it to you. You realize that peace doesn't come from fixing someone else. it comes from healing yourself.